I was wrong. Like 15 years ago, I said, stop coding managers, focus on the people. And I flipped on that, I don't know, like a decade ago, pre-robots, because your team knows when you're not technical. Your team knows when you're not, aware of how it all works. I'm kind of lucky in that I have a lot of time on my hands, but also been an engineer for forever, been a leader of engineers for a very long time, and now I've got all this time on my hands. And I feel like I have a million eager interns that are just like, what, let me hear your dumb idea. Let's build it right now. Let's go. And there's a lot of real dumb ideas in there, but there's some really valuable ones that are there.
Thank you for sticking around with us late. Rands, I have to say, I prepared for this chat and then I watched your keynote this morning.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. And I scrapped everything. So we got the thrill of improvisation a little bit because I want to ask you all about stories that you have shared this morning. So you have talked about the power of stories, and you have published and told stories on your blog, on your books for decades, right? And we might say you're the most prolific writer of engineering management stories of all time.
That might be true. We should ask the robots.
Are you offended by that, Eric?
No. I've been doing it for like 20, 30 years. So yeah, there's a bunch of books. There's a lot of writing, and it's fun. I love doing it. It's like you can ask me about stories, but actually, I was talking to someone during book signing. The stories come from writing a lot. Like someone asked for advice for new leaders, and the storytelling comes from your brain, kind of passing the knowledge through kind of a different part of your brain. And if you've written it down, you have a different version of it. And all the stories that you heard earlier today, and you'll hear right now, is usually things I've written down already and thought about a lot. So that's what it all comes from writing.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I wanted you to ask, because as a fellow writer with like lowercase w, I was curious how you collect these stories. I mean, do you write them down as they happen? Do you keep a journal about work?
Yeah. So I've been writing since I was 14. I am older than 14 now. It started with just kind of getting comfortable with the habit by having journals and whatnot. And it's just, like I said at the end of the talk, it's just, I've done it for forever. So right now, years later, if you say something, like someone said something after my talk, and they said this one line, and literally in my head, this is the advanced move. I'm like, that's a good article right there. He said something.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you what it was, but I was like, oh my God, that was amazing, right? And I can see, not the whole piece, but I know, I'm like, oh, new leaders would love this. Senior leaders would love this. There's this whole thing that kind of shows up. So I immediately, when he's gone, I'm like scribbling wherever I can scribble to kind of capture it. So that's going on. And then there's sort of this iterative process of taking different ideas and flushing them out, and some of them go away forever and never show up, and other ones just, I'm like, still love it, still working on it, and then it turns into a piece or a blog or a podcast or whatever. So but it's just a habit.
Hey, before we continue, I was reading the X 2026 survey on how AI is impacting developer productivity, and the results were kind of surprising. One of the main call-outs is that AI tools still lack critical context. This is how they describe it. An AI assistant can't reason over a Slack thread from an archive channel or the mental model of the engineer who built it. So now that we are all coding with agents, it's clear that the gap is not a bigger context window or adding another MCP server. Until agents have the same tribal knowledge you have, the value you get from them is still limited. And this is exactly the type of problem our sponsor today, Unblocked, is solving for tens of thousands of developers. Unblocked is the context layer for modern engineering teams. It brings together your PRs, docs, conversations, tickets, and more, turning them into actionable context for both your team and their AI agents. Engineering teams that are getting ahead right now use a context engine like Unblocked to make better plans, write higher quality code, use fewer tokens, and spend less time in review cycles. So if you're running Claude Code, Cursor, or any agentic workflow, give Unblocked a try. Get a free 3-week trial at getunblocked.com/refactoring. Made me think, I watched an interview a while back to Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, and he was asked, when do you write? And he replied, all the time.
All the time. It's exactly right.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm a big proponent of writing down things and journaling, even for work, for your work, even if you don't intend to publish anything. And so I was curious, you started doing this about things that happen at work because you already thought of publishing things or starting a blog, or did you start, to reflect on your job and improve how you work? And
I think I'm going to twist your question a little bit. It's kind of like, how do you get better at writing? It's a different question you're asking, but I'm going to answer your question this way. And
I'll follow you on this. I trust you.
I started writing, anyone could do a blog. This was a million years ago, and it was just easy, right? It was kind of fun because suddenly you had this, everyone could have sort of equal platform in terms of sharing content. And I was writing about poker or my dog or some dumb stuff or whatever. And it was like, it was good because I've always been writing. So it was very obvious to me to do that. But then I think I wrote about one-on-ones. And let's just say the week before, 4 people showed up. The week that I wrote one-on-ones, 14,000 people showed up. I was like, what?
Wow.
Well, look, I'm making these numbers up, but it was just like, it was a flood compared to the prior week when it was like Bob and Mary and Sue who showed up. And this was like everybody. And they're like, yeah, this makes sense. Oh my God, thank you that's a really helpful thing to say. And I'm like, oh, all right, that's interesting. So the feedback loop is really important too, which is you're not just writing into the world. And that's hard, publishing something. It's like a talk. You got to get up there and kind of, expose yourself. So but it's like, that's the piece is there was a feedback loop. So if you go look at the blog, because everything's still there, it starts with just all over, this is what I ate today crap. And it kind of marches towards sort of the thing that you're familiar with.
So always in the same blog and the same domain.
Yeah, the same one. No, actually, that's not true. I did a blog before it was a blog. It was called the Bitsifter Digest. This is before blogs were blogs. And it's because I just was writing and I was teaching myself HTML. So I did that. And then I stopped for 2 or 3 years, and then blogs showed up. I'm like, oh, I know how to do this, and I started doing it again.
Yeah, I love this. And also, while you were talking about sharing great stories as a way also to teach people things, I thought last year I interviewed Mary, who's here somewhere, and I asked her what makes for a great talk, right? Because she selects from thousands of them every year. And she said something that I remember always, that is, every talk starts with a great story. I mean, something that happened to you or to your team, etc. And then oftentimes the author goes a little bit further and creates like a framework or some kind of abstraction, out of that story. And I think that's what you have done many times, right? Creating vocabulary around things that happen in the story. Is that how you think about story? You take a story and then you try to make it more actionable, useful for others.
There's 2 things inside of that. I really love naming things. It just gives me joy as an introvert, as a nerd, as an engineer, like put a name on a thing. So like one of the early things that I named, which was inspired by a book by Peopleware, is a Free Electron, which is this type of engineer where he or she is just sort of bounces around and fixes stuff, and you're like, what are they doing? What's their job? They just go and touch stuff, and it gets better. So like I named that, and that stuck too. It kind of gives you a beginning for kind of telling a story about that person, that thing. But it's like I said in the talk, like I spend a lot of time stating the obvious and saying things that you already see, and I often just give them a name. Another one was like incrementalists and completionists. These are 2 types of personalities out there. Incrementalists are fine, just like moving it down the road a little bit, and completionists like want to do the complete solution right now. And we need both of them, and you know who they are, right? But putting a name on it just kind of makes it a little, that's the beginning of that framework that you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, naming things is peak engineering work.
Yeah, exactly. So. That's what I love doing.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. And I often, like, back to your other question, I'm like, oh, that's a thing. That's a this. And I'm like, oh, that's a great name. That's a blogger. That's like the post I'm going to write, over the next month or 2.
Yeah. I mean, I still remember many of these names. And I think there's power when you create like a shared vocabulary around things. And I remember many times I was in a one-on-one and I thought, this is event, right? And I picked it up from you, and it makes it easier for others to understand concepts. And
yeah, and there wasn't a lot of the management books that were around when I started writing books were just they were unapproachable. I couldn't read them. I'm like, this is just, you're not an engineer, and I'm not even sure if you're a leader. You know, you're just throwing these frameworks and buzzwords at me that didn't make any sense. So that was another thing. I think the language comes from being an engineer, so it's familiar. You're like, oh, that makes sense to me, right? And I'm also naming things which engineers like.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you have talked about stories, not just for the value of publishing them or writing books, but also in the context of giving people feedback or getting a message across. And I love this because I think there are so many ways of giving feedback to someone, you know, on a spectrum that goes from the more direct advice, just do this, to the most indirect, that is, I have a story to tell you, and maybe, you know, wink, wink. So how do you decide what's the right way of giving feedback on a situation?
That is what I call a it depends question, because it depends. But there's I'll give you a couple scenarios. I mean, one of the things is sort of like, how big is the lesson that you're trying to teach? And like, if it's huge, you're not going to, like, there was this guy who was doing amazingly well at a company I was at before. Telling you a story now. See what I did there? And he was just getting A's, A promo. And he got to director level and he got a C, because the job is totally different than senior manager at this place. It was totally different. And he lost his mind. Like, he has never gotten a C in 7 years. And like the job description was I told him it was coming. I'm like, hey, just so you know, you're not getting A. No way that you're starting this job as a good director. And he was just mad at me, furious. And it was horrible. So in that case, it was, you know, first explain, hey, here's the document where I told you this was going to happen. And then I walked them through a story about me going through exactly the same process 7 years ago. That didn't fix it, but it was better. It was better than sort of a, like, yo, dude, pull it together, right? It was there, and it was sort of just trickle him for months and months and months to actually get him in the right state. So that's where it's a good time to, it's not as, sometimes, you know, telling people what to do. In this case, he would have just gotten worse. And it was more like, in that case, I do that. So but it really depends, you know. Sometimes it's just, I want a gentle touch, tell you this thing, as opposed to like, you know, directive, you know, the sky is falling, we got to fix this now, man.
Yeah. And I love it because in a way I feel it's counterintuitive, because we were chatting before that we are both introverts, and I don't know about you, I'm not comfortable with conflict. And so the type of feedback that I have received the most often is to be more direct, right? To share feedback in a more actionable and clear way. So I feel it doesn't come exactly natural to many people to think, wait a minute, the best way to get the outcome that I want is to make a step back and actually tell a story for the other person to connect the dots about what they should do.
There's another thing, is another introvert thing, which is the extroverts are exhausting. Love you all. If you're here, you're amazing. But in this case, extroverts want to fight, and I mean that in a good way, not in a like he wanted me to like step up and actually go a couple rounds with him on this. No way. Introvert, extrovert, right? And so like there's a time when you got to step up and do that and know kind of what to do there. But like, I think there's a time where your job as a leader is to bring calm to a situation that could literally get explosive. So, yeah.
Yeah. And also made me think of coaching. In a way, I've been briefly a coach, and I've been coached various times in my life. And I always remember something that my friend Joel Chippendale, who might be around here, said me, that coaching starts with this premise that the person is capable and resourceful on their own. And so most of the time, you don't give direct advice like, do this, but you need to make the person get to its own conclusions that they can own, right? And so stories might be, you know, the right amount of input to unblock the person without actually feeding them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's right. It's like I said in the deck, it's like that last slide is like they get to choose to decide whether they want to learn or not. It's really important, right? I mean, sometimes you really wish they would learn immediately, but it's if they don't choose to do it, if they don't hear you, they're not. If they don't hear the story, if they don't hear the lesson, they're not going to do anything. And they're not illusion of choice, because it's not illusion. They really, but that idea that it's their thing to choose to do it, like that changes the whole dynamic in terms of what they're going to do about it.
Yeah, love this. So I want to change topic a little bit and go to something that you have touched in the keynote, that is briefly about AI and your tinkering. If you guys thought we would spare AI comments, instead, here they come.
Here they come.
Yes. So I really enjoyed your blog posts where you talk about all kinds of little apps, weather forecast apps, and tinkering. And I especially enjoyed how you talk about the experience of using AI. And you've said, I mean, almost I quote you, that you're getting daily joy from this, and you're not getting any level of discomfort as other people instead report, because you say that over the course of your career, you have already learned how to give up your Legos, how to delegate, how to make clear requests, detect lies from humans,
right, totally.
Especially detect lies. And so for you, this is natural. Like, this is business as usual, right? And first of all, is this correct? Is this the current state of your relationship?
It really is. I mean, I'm kind of lucky in that I have a lot of time on my hands, but also been an engineer for forever, been a leader of engineers for a very long time, and now I've got all this time on my hands. And I feel like I have a million eager interns that are just like, let me hear your dumb idea. Let's build it right now. Let's go. And there's a lot of real dumb ideas in there, but there's some really valuable ones that are there. And my ability to like create or prototype thing, a lot of throwaway stuff, but a lot of things which are just like things I've been thinking about for, I don't know, 10 years. I'm like, when I have some time, I will go and do this thing, right? And those all exist now. And now I'm like getting into different iterations of it. So it's, from a prior company that I worked at, I was just talking to the managers there that worked for me, and every single one of them is coding again. They're fixing bugs. They're not building huge features. And by the way, this was not a mandate from on high. It's just the work to go and understand, okay, what's this code base? How does this build? All this, that's all gone. Like, it's not gone. It's there, but it's all much more approachable now. So they have this. So these folks who are still very good people leaders, technical leaders, are suddenly doing more of that work. Yeah. By the way, they're happier too, because they get to kind of do both of those things. So if you have the thing I worry about the most is the juniors who didn't have those years of experience of learning how to do the build, or what is this, or how does this work, or what is architecture like, blah, blah, blah. What does good code look like? You still have to learn all that. The robots can help you with that, but that's the one that I worry about, is because they haven't had all the experience. So, because I look at this, I'm like, this is, I mean, I watch the robots talking to me. I'm like, well, that's a lie. What is that? Like, I got to tell this story. Sorry, I talk about robots way too much. I have this tool which basically looks at incoming emails and sees if you want to join the Rands leadership Slack, and it goes through and it looks at things, and please supply a LinkedIn, blah, 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 blah. So it goes through and figures it out, and it helps me, and then I do a response, and I do it. It's an automation thing. And this is yesterday. I've been using this for 6 months. I'm looking at it, and it goes, oh yeah, this was taking too long, so I started inventing users for you. I'm like, what? Like, it literally, because the API call was too slow, it started inventing data to kind of move things along, which were people who were supposed to be applying to do this. I'm like, this is unacceptable. And that happens once a day, that I find like a heinous sort of thing. So like, if I wasn't watching, if I didn't know kind of the flow and kind of how it worked, I would have been screwed. What? I mean, I probably would have found out in some other way. So it doesn't absolve you from watching, listening, caring, auditing, looking for quality, blah, 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 all the things that we've learned for years by being engineering leaders. You still have to do all of that. It's actually more work. I mean, I'm enjoying it. I'm making it sound like work. I'm not working. But like, it is a lot of context switching, a lot of paying attention that I didn't have to do. Yeah,
and actually this seems to be backed by data when it comes to managers. And I watched the talk earlier from today from Justin Rioch from DX, who said that it reports that managers are shipping like 4 times more PRs, which is like almost an order of magnitude higher than the gains that we are seeing.
Yeah, and
normal engineers.
I was wrong. 15 years ago, I said, stop coding managers, focus on the people. And I flipped on that, I don't know, like a decade ago, pre-robots, because your team knows when you're not technical. Your team knows when you're not, aware of how it all works. And so you got to do something to kind of, and those folks that have been kind of struggling with, should I not do that, now have the ability, I think, to be able to do that and keep it sharpened and keep on, feeling like they're being, while also doing all that important people work that I value immensely.
Yeah, which kind of goes against the narrative that we hear all the time, that AI empowers massively ICs and normal engineers. We are all back to being members of the technical staff, quote unquote,
right.
Management layers are shrinking and middle management is in trouble. But it feels to me like if I look at someone like you, who's an experienced manager and possibly even removed from IC work for a long time, but you have like the perfect skill set and attitude to thrive with this. So how is it really?
I'm not sitting at Anthropic or all those places right now, so I don't know how it's going on a day-to-day basis. The question I keep getting asked is sort of like, do you need these middle managers for these humans who are building stuff? And I'm like, what has changed that you don't need these folks? In fact, if you believe, which I believe, that they are more productive, the blast radius of what they're working on is getting bigger and bigger. That they probably need more support, I would guess. So and what does that support mean? It's the common things. It's career coaching. It's how to get more strategic. It's how to delegate, how to become a leader, blah, blah, blah. There's a long list of those things. Anyone who's going to go and say, well, that's all going away, I would disagree with that vehemently. I think it could change. I think it can be a different form of what it is, but I still think you need those humans helping human things. What is the configuration of that? We'll see, but I don't see it. I definitely see it changing, but I don't see it going away.
Yeah, and I also think about some of the instincts that you mentioned before, you acquiring over time and to use to steer AI. And this is something that you get over decades of work, possibly in many cases. Probably there is very high leverage work in terms of passing along these instincts and coaching younger 10x engineers, maybe, yes, but without this.
I think a lot of what is going to get replaced by the robots is the stuff we didn't want to do in the first place, by the way. It's a lot of the sort of process pieces. Make sure this is over here. Make sure this is well documented. Make sure, understand the dependencies. Tell me when they change, blah, 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 like on and on and on. There's all this stuff. Or if it's in a large organization, when you have project managers or program managers, these are lovely people, but their job is keeping the trains on time. And I've been using the robots for train timekeeping, and they're really good at it because they're very aware. Okay, cool. Give me a structure to work with, and tell me the sort of things you want to keep track of, and I will keep track of that for you. So I think that a lot of the process pieces are likely to vastly change. They're already changing right now. That's going to change a lot too.
Yeah, and in fact, I think one counterintuitive thing that I'm seeing, speaking with many people, is that if you think of the engineers who are getting the most out of this, who are the most productive, they are not necessarily the most technically prepared or strong engineers. It's like a slightly different skill set. It's people maybe who are more oriented on process, on platform, on efficiency in a way.
Yes, and I disagree with you. I that was my thesis, but one of my engineers from Pinterest, he built visual search before there were robots. So big thing. And before that, he built AWS. So this is a gentleman who I respect a lot. He's at another company now doing kind of greenfield stuff. And he and I had a drink. I'm like, how's it going? Like, you were probably the best engineer that I know. Like, what? Because like in my head, he's like sitting there staring at the code and like moving one line, and everyone cheers, right? So that's not what's happening. I'm like, are you true? This is a month ago. Are you more productive? And he's like, oh yeah, I just talk to the robots all the time. But he said two things. He said, he's like low-level infrastructure guy, so he's like building like, databases and stuff. So he's like, I got to keep it very focused, a very clear thread of what it's working on. That's got to be like very clear. And I got to really over specify in terms of what I actually wanted to do. So lots of guardrails. What am I talking about? I'm talking about a spec, by the way, which is the last thing engineers ever want to write because we want to go start building things. That's more fun, right? So, but it turns out that ability to specify, to tell and explain what you want to do is a very valuable skill. That's what a prompt is right now. So, and this is a person who is building amazingly technical, scalable stuff, and he's 20% more productive, which is shocking.
Yeah. So 20% more productive, set as not that much more. It's not 10x, right? Because you think it's the overall, what we heard today, that it's because normal engineers spend just, 15% of the time coding, and the rest is overhead, it's meetings and stuff.
Right. Yeah. I was, my thesis with him going into this drink that I had with him was he was going to giggle at it and say, yeah, the robot's really not there yet. But he was fully engaged, fully believed it. That was his number. I think it's going to vary a lot by different people. It's not 100%. I think there's still overhead of all the people stuff and getting stuff done and communicating and syncing everyone together. But it's definitely, I've never seen anything like it in my career.
Yeah. Love it. And another thing that I remember reading from your blog while you were describing your experiments is that you have this feeling that the faster you go, the more your desire to get even faster and accomplish even more, grows. So it's not like, and I've heard versions of this from many people, like, it's not like we're using this additional productivity to sit back and work a little bit less, but I mean, the people that I know who are the most into this are also the ones who are spending the most insane number of hours. So how is it for you? And yeah.
It is like, it's shocking. Like, it's pro leisure circuit. Like, I can get up, ride my bike for 4 hours and go play Arc Raiders. That sounds like a great day. That's not a great 3 days, and it's definitely not a good 5 days. But I'm finding myself, again, I'm not building the next Netscape or anything like that. I'm doing small hustles and hobbies and whatnot. So it's, but like hours of it, like 8 a.m. till like 3 with a lunch break in the middle. That's work, people. And at joy. But the other interesting thing is I'm usually doing 3 different things at the same time, because I spin up Claude on this one, I spin up another one. So I'm doing that. So there's this exhaustion that comes with it. I've been reading about this a lot, about people who are like, I'm getting a lot done, but I'm doing these huge context switches as I'm jumping between fixing the robot here, doing this thing over there. So it's actually exhausting to me. And I'm very curious about folks that are at Apple or Slack or Pinterest. Like, what is that like when they've got, that's just me doing my thing, when they've got 50 people on the team all doing this? How are they coordinating all this? Again, I think the robots can help with that. But I still think there's this leadership layer, which is important to kind of keep it kind of pointing in the right direction. But it's exhausting. I can get really tired.
Yeah. And do you think it's a matter of, it's the effect of leverage in a way, this feeling that when you're in a situation where you give 1 unit of input and you get 100 units of output, then you feel this kind of drag that you want to just one more, right?
The rabbit head. I definitely feel that. It's definitely that, but it's, I'm going to turn this into a positive. It's motivated by joy. Like, I want to build stuff. It gives me great joy to be building things. I like to build stuff. I built this bot for the Slack. Its name's Floyd. He has a whole backstory. He's from the Planetfall game from 1 million years ago. And if you talk to him, he tells you jokes about the game. And there's all this little human parts of it. And his job is basically to see incoming job posts, make sure they're okay, and put them in a job database. And you will have a delightful time talking with Floyd. And total passion project, there to help job management on the Rands Slack. And but it's like, I'm getting a lot of feedback. They're like, this is great. I love this robot. Because he's humble. He's kind of dumb. He's self-effacing and this sort of thing. And like that came out of my ability to create things now that I have that scalability, but also just me as a human kind of being a goofball and whatnot. So I can do, like, that's just, that wouldn't have existed in 1 million years. I would never have hired a contractor to do that, because I would never said, well, by the way, I want it to be based on this video game from 1984 and blah, 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 and all this sort of stuff. So that ability, the way that I think about it is this: if there's 100 people on the planet, let's just say, I'm making this up, 30 of them, because they're CS majors or CS adjacent, they could do stuff right now. Now it's as many as you want. which means the amount of garbage that's going to show up is immense because you're going to have someone who has no idea what it is. But that person, number 65, who is a genuinely, should have been an engineer, but because of circumstances, she never ended up there, has that ability to do it, willing to learn, willing to figure out all this stuff there. She's going to create an app that would have never existed before. And it's amazing. And that stuff's going to rise because you're going to see it and go like, that's an amazing app. I've never seen anything like that. That is there. That's another thing that can show up because of this, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah, and I think we often, I think too often, think in terms of AI versus humans, AI replacing things versus, expanding and making possible things that otherwise wouldn't get done at all. Right.
Yeah. So let me tell you another story because that's what I do.
I'm here for it.
When the first reaction around a lot of my friends and whatnot was just, I was fear. They wouldn't say fear. They were just like generally mad and about the robots AI. And I'd say, wow, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. And they're like, I don't really know. I'm just scared of it. They don't say that, but that's what they're saying, which is fine. That's totally fine. But I was just like, I just see this sort of huge thing coming, which is going to change the world, guaranteed. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Why are you scared? And then I remembered, dating myself immensely, the amount of fear when the Apple II showed up. Apple II, this is 1977. Yeah. And there was a huge amount of fear about it. They were very scared. And you know who was most scared? Accountants. Because they were sitting there with the calculator and the paper and early spreadsheets and blah blah blah. So they were like, we're screwed here. The gig's up. The computers count faster than we do. So bye. 10 years later, there was 4x the amount of accountants. Why was that? Or some huge increase in it? Because the PCs, the Apples, the PCs pushed them out of doing this boring work, and they got really good at this work up here, which is the more strategic work. It's the thinking work. It's you need your brain to do this sort of thing. So it didn't this is not proving to be true yet, but that's the thing that happened is suddenly you had this increase in the amount of ability for people to build stuff and do stuff. So I don't know if that's going to happen here, but I hope that it does.
Well, I think this is the optimistic thesis.
Yes,
right? That is, okay, let's say we are getting 10x faster, but today's software is severely limited in the amount of software we can create because it's so expensive. Yeah. So you can make an argument that we may want to create 10x the amount of software if we had the ability.
Can I bullshit you a little crazy here? Because I have a thought on this. It's really,
please.
You just said something really important about how expensive it is to build messages or build Slack or build Pinterest. It's like really hard. It takes a lot of time. And you need a specialized sort of worker cast to actually go do that sort of thing. I think one thing that you're going to see is that application layer is going to get really blurry right now because what you really care about is actually your data inside of it or your set of friends. You have your friends, you have your data, you have this thing, and you kind of want to communicate in this way, but you want to communicate in that way. And suddenly you can, as long as you know who your people are, how to get in touch with them, you can choose, you're going to be able to choose the way that you actually want to do that. So it's really, this is the OpenClaw thing if you used it, but there's just going to be these assistants and stuff that are going to just be tailored to you and the way that you want to talk to your audience or your family. And I'm going to be like, okay, cool, that's great. I'm always going to be in terminal. That's how I roll. Don't give me any apps. And that's fine too, right? That's the thing. So that application layer, that lock-in piece, I'm expecting that to change quite a bit. I think you still need to create a doc or a keynote or this sort of thing, but there's a lot of that stuff which is going to get really cool and sort of ephemeral, which is going to be awesome.
But you say that the data layer is going to be...
The data layer, you got to have that piece. Like, who are my family? Who is my family? Who are the people I recently talked to? Who's in the Rands leadership Slack? What have they said? Like, all of that stuff there. But the way that you're going to interact with it, I think is going to get a little... I'm already spending more time talking to Slack inside of Claude than I am inside of Slack, which is mind-boggling when you think about it.
Yeah, love this. So you have said before that you are in the pro leisure circuit.
Pro leisure circuit.
I love that. So if you ever thought of getting back in what's the other circuit name?
What's the what?
What's the name for the other circuit?
Retirement?
No, I mean in the professional.
Oh, I don't know. You have a job. It's just a funny thing I say to kind of give myself the ability not to say that I'm retired, because I don't think I am. I really don't think I am. Again, we were talking about this before. If you and I were talking 6 months ago, I'd be like, "Pro Leader Circuit, this is it. I'm done. Thanks very much. That was great." But it's been a while. Even with all the robots, building stuff and whatnot, I'm still. I think it's going to be really interesting and hard, by the way, for the next 5 years in software. I think the title is going to change, but I think I'm like, wow, that sounds juicy. Let's jump in and figure that one out. So I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm probably going back to something at some point.
Yeah,
I'm not going to found my own thing. That's super hard. Respect. Founding a company, that's work.
Would you like something that looks more like a free electron, as you said before?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this before. I had a gig before, after I left Apple, where I was I'm like, hey, I kind of interested in what you're doing. You have an engineer director. You don't need me. I just can I come around? And they, hadn't written books and stuff. So I'm like, hey, can I just go around and figure out how to help? And they're like, huh? And I'm like, listen, give me 90 days. And if at the end of 90 days, you're like, there's no value, this guy's just bouncing around wasting money, we'll end it. And that conversation never happened. And I was an exec at that company a year and a half later, but that was really fun. It's a privilege too. It's sort of, you're lucky to be able to go in and kind of I just show up at Teams and be like, hey, I heard this is broken. They're like, yeah, this is broken. I'm like, yeah. Can I help you fix it? They're like, yeah, that'd be awesome. I'm like, well, how? I'm like, well, I fixed it 7 times. I'm going to tell you each time, and you can pick the way they want to do it this time. And they're like, okay, cool. That makes it really simple. It's a lot harder than that. But I just did that for like a year, and no good deed goes unrewarded. So they made me an exec, and I was miserable.
Love it. So, and you also said before that you're finishing a book, right?
I am. Two books, actually.
4 months. When you said?
There's a new one coming out for O'Reilly that comes out in about as soon as I finish the 4 chapters. Which is, I'm really close. And then they're Managing Humans, the first one that everyone knows about, is I'm doing a 5th edition, which is coming out in like 2 or 3 months. So just got to kind of clean it up and sprinkle a little robot on it, and take out a little bit of the COVID, and make it 2026.
So it's becoming from managing humans to managing humans and.
Well, I thought you were going to ask this. I started writing Managing Robots about 2 months ago, just for myself, because I'm like, this is hilarious.
Yeah,
like these skills apply here. I'm having the same conversations with Claude that I had with Myra at Apple. I've started. If it's a book, we'll see. I don't know, but right now it's sort of just stories that I'm capturing and kind of going like, this is interesting. So it's another reason, actually, I just realized this, why I want to go back in, because it's just me with the dog, and it's kind of sitting there kind of like, well, this is interesting. And I think I want to be talking to people. I'm like, hey, this is really cool. And they're like, this sucks. I'm like, really? Tell me more about this.
You want more stories.
Yeah, I'm looking for more stories. And I think it is really going to change things, but I'm also obviously painfully optimistic.
And the process is always, you publish things first on the blog, for the most part?
Yeah, it's mostly 80% of whatever you see is in the book is you've probably had a chance to see it before. 20% is sort of front matter and other things. And sometimes I just throw some original chapters into each book just to kind of, do something else. People used to, publishers really didn't like that 20 years ago. They don't care anymore. They're just like, cool, let's get a book in there. If it's been, like, by the way, if it gets out there, if I publish it before, I'm getting feedback. People are, and they say, this is good or this is bad. I'm like, okay, great. So it's what they're getting is a better piece, a better story, because I've had a chance to edit. It's not just sitting there in a book that no one's ever seen before, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that I'm not an editor, but I think for an editor, it's a big plus that, someone wants to publish it.
I think they agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look back at the things that you've written on the blog and you put them together, are you able to find like common threads and common things that you had not thought about, even about yourself?
Oh, you mean like later after I've written?
Yeah. After when you're in the process of putting blog posts together to create a book, and it's a different experience, right? I've tried to do that a few times, not to write a book, but to
Well, I mean, I totally cheat because I just take everything that I wrote for the last 3 years and put it into 3 sections and kind of say, these are the sections. I do a little bit there, but it's interesting because this most recent book, again, thanks to the robots, by the way, I have all the chapters I've written by them, but I had the robots synthesize them and say, okay, cool. What are these 32 chapters thing? And like, give me a suggestion about what is the right order given sort of what we pulled out of it. And it's like, well, this one doesn't belong here because this is about people and this is all technology. So it's like it's giving me the ability to kind of look at my data. It's not writing anything for me. I'm a writer. I love writing. Robots are very helpful, but like for writing, that's my place. And I know they can do it. Go ask the robot to say, hey, tell me, write this like Rands, and it'll do this weird approximation of my voice that sounds very strange, but it's kind of close. It's like, well, it's not bad. But they're really powerful as, again, chunking the data, parsing it, doing this sort of thing.
Yeah,
so.
I would have asked you about this because there's all this controversy about using AI for some reason we are all happy to use it for coding, but people get mad for writing. But I understand that because I write myself, and so it's a personal thing. So what's the level of help and the kind of tasks that you are good with using AI for them, and you then draw the line at some point and say, no, this is my own thing?
So I've read a lot of books. Maybe this is a good last story because it's a good one. One of the things I wanted to do, I have all these kind of receipts coming in, royalty payments, and I look at them. I'm like, oh, okay. I think it was 500 last time. Now it's 600. That's more. Like why? Like what changed? Whatever. So I had the robots. I had run through all of my email, which is in Gmail, pull out every single royalty statement I ever had, and I know you were asking about writing. This is a writing thing. And I said, okay, cool. Like, tell me how I'm doing on all these books. And it's like, hey, this one did this much. This one did this much. This one. But by the way, you were never paid for the second edition of this. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Excuse me? I'm like, okay, come on. You hallucinating this. Show your work. Impress me with your thoroughness. And it did. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So like, this is 1.5 years that I never got paid. So what did I do? I said, well, Claude, I would like you to write a pretty sternly worded, legally threatening mail that I would like to send. And it crushed it. It did so well. I'm a nice guy. I'm never going to write that email. I'm like, hey, sorry, could you pay me, please? And I read it. I edited a little bit, but I was like, yeah, cool. By the way, this particular editor responds instantaneously, did not respond. And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting sign.
That's a good sign.
It's a really good sign. I'm like, okay, cool. Because I figured it was an error on my part. It was not. So, I got a mail like a week later. They're like, didn't apologize, by the way. They're just like, we're writing you a check for blah, 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 $1,000. I'm like, oh, that's great. Thank you. I will use that. In a case where it's sort of a transactional thing or me not talking to you, I'm okay with that. But for the writing, for the stuff that is my voice, that is my book, the Rands brand, that's all me. I will do copy editing. If I have a list of 7 things, and I'm like, there's an 8 here and I can't think of it. What's the 8? It'll be
research,
the background stuff. It's really good at that. It's really helping me just from, again, the process piece. Like I have something in Markdown. I'm like, ship the chapter. It used to be this process of firing up Google or Microsoft Word, pasting it, formatting. That's all gone. I'm just like, paste it. It's done. They're like, great, thanks. So
save your time for the good stuff.
For the writing stuff. That's really fun. I get about to build the tools that do all that too. So it's a lot of fun.
That's great. Michael, I think we are over time. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found this chat valuable, you can subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Also, please consider giving us a rating or leaving a review, as that really helps other listeners find the show. You can find all past episodes and learn more about the show at refactoring.fm. See you in the next episode.